Good afternoon, everyone. General Laws Subcommittee on Professions and Occupations will come to order. And the clerk will open the roll for attendance. All right, the clerk will close the roll. We have a quorum. And first order of business is a motion by Delegate McClure.
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that we move HB 350 by for the day.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that HB 350 go by for the day. That's a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the bill is by for the day. All right. Also, I have received a request from the patron that we strike HB 722. Do I hear a motion?
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. And I'm just looking at the message to make sure I'm striking the right number because the patron has two bills. May I strike 722? Okay. 722 as motion moved and seconded to strike 722 from the docket. Although that is a recorded vote, so the clerk will open the roll. The clerk will close the roll, and at the request of the patron, HB 722 is struck from the docket. All right, so moving on with our agenda, we'll generally try to go down the list here, and I do know that Delegate Gardner has a committee to get to shortly, so we'll go ahead and start there with HB 317.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. HB 317 makes the necessary amendments to the current code to ensure consistent application of the Office of the Children Ombudsman's authority in investigating the administrative acts of children's residential facilities. This bill cleans up the code related to the Office of the Children's Ombudsman. It adds on children's residential facilities to the definition of administrative act and other provisions regarding the OCO's authority to investigate agencies to be consistent with its investigations of other types of agencies. It removes the requirement for adoption attorneys to inform biological parents, foster parents, and prospective adoptive parents about the OCO, but maintains the requirement for the local DSS, children's residential facilities, and a child placement agency to do so. In addition, it authorizes the OCO to interview children in foster care who submit a complaint to the OCO or who are the subject of an investigation. Interviewing and communicating with the child who submits a complaint is essential to the ability of the OCO to review the child's complaint and to assist the child. And with that, Madam Chair, if you have questions, I actually have the director of the OCO here.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions from the committee? You can use your request to speak button if you have a question for the patron. All right. Otherwise, if there's anyone here that would like to speak in favor of the bill, please come to the podium.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Eric Reynolds, Children's Ombudsman. We requested these technical fixes and clarifications and appreciate Delegate Gardner's carrying the bill and ask that you support it and report it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anyone here in opposition to the bill? If this bill is to report favorably, it would need to be re-referred to HHS for another look there. So at this time, a motion would be in order.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to report and refer the bill to HHS. The clerk will open the roll. And the clerk will close the roll, and the bill reports 8-0. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members.
All right, let's see, Delegate, Delegate Ware was on it, I don't see Delegate Ware, so Delegate.
Yeah,
He's in another committee, gotcha, we'll keep an eye out. So just kind of going down the list, Delegate Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the subcommittee, I have House Bill 517. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, House Bill 517 would designate the honeybee as Virginia's state pollinator. I'm holding in my hand over 1,000 signed petitions from Virginians in support of this effort to name the honeybee the official pollinator. Well, ask yourself, why are we doing this? Well, first of all, I think we should recognize, there's many reasons, but one reason that we should recognize is the history behind the honeybee. Virginia was directly tied to the introduction of the honeybee into the northern hemisphere. The colonists living in America, in Jamestown, brought a variety of new food plants with them and found that the native pollinators were insufficiently interested in the non-native plants. Things like apples and peaches and potatoes and tomatoes, okra, field beans, soybeans, watermelon, and peanuts are all some of the food plants that were brought to the colonies over time by both the Europeans and Africans. But in a letter documented December the 5th, 1621, the colonists at Jamestown asked that the honeybee colonies be sent to Virginia. And the honeybee colonies arrived at City Point in 1622. This was ordered by the king. Then the honeybee was integral to human life. Food crops that bumblebees could not or would not pollinate, honeybees did. They provided a reliable sweetener for honey for cooking, a sweetener for bitter foods, and even the making of mead. Beeswax was also used for candle making and waterproofing shoes, tools, barrels, and homes. And of course, the honeybee was actually one of the insect that was most responsible for the success of the Jamestown settlement. Today, honeybees are considered the most effective pollinator and most widely available to supplement local pollinators to increase agricultural productivity. They count for 55% of fruit pollination, 72% of vegetable pollination, supplementing native pollinators to increase both quantity and quality of Virginia farm products. Over 100 commercially grown foods are pollinated by honeybees in the United States. The last estimated value of Virginia's apples, melons, pumpkins, beans, cotton, and other farm products attributed to the honeybee population exceeds $116 million here in Virginia. Pollination by honeybees contributes more than $16 billion to the value of the United States crop production. That's why, Madam Chair, that's why 19 states, we would be the 20th state to add the honeybee as to a state native emblem. And then there is the honey. Of course, Virginia produced 35 pounds of honey per hive in 2017 at an average of $5.73 a pound. 39,000 pounds of honey was commercially produced at the value of excess of $1 million. Again, I'm here on behalf of those people that have signed this petition, recognizing the honeybee. This obviously is not the most important bill that we'll deal with in this session by far. But I think it's one that we recognize that the work the honeybee has performed, its place in our history, in Virginia's history, without the king sending over to help the colonists survive the Jamestown settlement, we may not have had a successful Jamestown settlement, and of course they wouldn't be here in North America. So that's the bill, Madam Chair, all that for one line that we changed in the code.
Thank you, Delegate. If members have questions, if they could please indicate their request to speak button, because I'm seeing a few come up. So I'll start with Delegate Krizik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand there's a lot of buzz around this bill. Yeah, I'll be playing out there later on. This actually is an interesting dilemma because it's a very popular bee, but so is the bumblebee and some other good Virginia native bees too. But I think it's important that we do promote this bee because it does work very hard. It came from, I think George Washington had it in his, and of course I'm partial to George Washington representing Mount Vernon. So, but I do want to tell you something. I've learned a lot from all the constituent mail, and we have gotten a lot. Like I said, there's been a lot of buzz. Bees, did you know this, are descended from wasps, and wasps are carnivores. And at some point in time, these bees were probably, or the wasps were eating the other insects around flowers, and then they stumbled upon the pollen, and then became, and somehow over the years evolved, some of them evolved into bees, and that's where we get the bees. But it's very important that we protect our pollinators and that we especially grow local Virginia flora and fauna. And we want to get our plants in the ground. And I do want to say I'm a little bit perturbed when I see out in the grounds of the General Assembly that they've been planting nandinas, which are not native to Virginia, and actually there's the cedar waxwing bird, which is a native. If it eats the berries from a nandina, it can die. So I think that was not a very wise choice. I know it's an easy plant to plant and it takes off, but I would like to see us work together and try to get a native garden planted out in front with native plants, and that would be good for your pollinator and other Virginia pollinators. So that's something we need to work on, but thank you for bringing this bill forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate, do you want to respond to any of his buzzing?
I agree about the buzz, Madam Chair.
Thank you, delegates. Next is Delegate Fowler. Delegate Fowler.
Hello, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just briefly, I obviously want to thank the Delegate Krizek for bringing this bill, but again, as somebody that lives on a farm and all that, we would have no agriculture to speak of without the honeybee. I mean, that little bee does so much for our farmers and things, so it's just, I think it's only fitting that we do this, and I hope it'll be the pleasure of the committee to report the bill.
Thank you, Delegate. If there are no other members that have questions for the Patriot at this time, I'd invite anyone who is here to speak in favor of the bill to please come to the podium.
Madam Chair, I feel a little obligation just to, because I visited with you all, along with Mark Smith and the East Richmond Beekeepers Association and the Virginia State Beekeepers Association. Really appreciate you putting this bill forward, and we are more than happy to answer any of your questions about bees, and we promise that we'll be bringing you around some honey. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, Mark Smith. I am a member of the East Richmond Beekeepers Association. Most of you would not know, but I do have a number of hives. And in addition to the historical and economic benefit, as mentioned by Delegate Hope, I would also mention that I believe that there's an educational opportunity for the bee clubs around the state, the Department of Agriculture, to work with the young people to understand the significance that Delegate Fowler has mentioned. So I do live in the city of Richmond. My bees are on the Gloucester, Matthews County line, so I cover a little territory with that. And I do want to take this time to thank Delegate Fowler to agreeing to serve as the chief co-patron on the bill. I hope you'll vote for the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill? I don't.
Madam Chair, if I may make a quick statement.
Please do, Delegate.
I want to recognize a gentleman who's not with us, Lanny Davis Ballard, 84 years old. He passed away in October 12th of 2023, and I've had numerous conversations with him over the last few years. But Lanny became an expert at beekeeping and served at the Virginia State Beekeepers Association legislative liaison for the last 20 years and served as a second vice president for a while. In 2006, he was awarded the L.L. Langstroth Award for the Virginia State Beekeepers Association for his contributions to beekeeping during Lanny's tenure as a liaison, accomplishments as the Beehive Grant tenure, for later the Beehive Distribution Program, as well as recognition by the Virginia State Beekeepers Association 100th anniversary and honeybee arrival in Jamestown at the 400th anniversary were adopted by the General Assembly. This was a passion of his to see this day, to make the beekeeper the state pollinator, and I got to give him credit for these over 1,000 letter petition signers Lanny orchestrated throughout the state, having different conventions and things like that. So I do want to recognize he passed away in October. but I know that he wanted to see something like this occur. I just want to make that statement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate, for taking the time to recognize those efforts.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Delegate Holt.
move to report.
Second.
All right. It has been motioned and seconded to refer HB 517. The clerk will open the roll. Clerk will close the roll, and the bill passes 8-0. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. So, I see the car. Going down the list, I know patrons are coming and going. They've got committees and bills. Delegate Leftwich, you are next on the list, but you're also on the committee. So, do you have to be at another committee tonight? So maybe, okay, you're stuck with us. So we'll hold off for a minute. So next, I see Delegate Weber in the row for HB 727.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I do have some amendments that have been prepared for HB 727, if I may move them. And what they do is they ensure that the language of the bill is directed at VEDP as the entity that would utilize the program that I'm going to describe in the bill.
Okay, Council, could you report the amendment if you feel that there's anything to add beyond the delegate's description?
Yes, Madam Chair. Those amendments are available online, but on line 14, after the word means, strike A, insert in economic development. At the beginning of line 15, strike agency, insert entity in the executive branch. Line 22, after 4, strike the creation of entrepreneurial, insert qualifying. And on line 27, after of the, strike entrepreneurial and insert qualifying.
All right, do you hear a motion to adopt the amendments? So moved. It's been moved and seconded. It's a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the amendments are before us. Delegate Weber, you can go ahead and present your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, this bill is designed to promote economic competitiveness in Virginia and the Commonwealth. When businesses are deciding to locate, one of the things that they consider among taxes, et cetera, is a regulatory burden. For us to compete with our peer states, for instance, one of our states to the south has implemented a similar program in regards to financial institutions. What this bill does is it will allow for a temporary waiver of regulatory requirements in a controlled environment, excluding DOLE and the Department of Environmental Quality. The governor would work with the VEDP and the Virginia Innovation Partnership, hence the reason for the changes, to ensure that they are the ones that do this, to put in place a temporary waiver that would apply only to the companies participating in this deal. If the waiver proves successful, then either the regulatory waive could be permanent or altered, just to help the business foster. And if the waiver, if the business is shown unsuccessful, they automatically get withdrawn, or those regulations immediately go back into effect 18 months after the waiver is granted. That's what the bill does, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Weber. Are there any questions from the committee? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of the bill?
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and members of the subcommittee. Nicole Riley, Senior Vice President for Policy at the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. We appreciate Delegate Weber bringing forward this bill. VEDP supports this bill as it would provide an additional resource in the Commonwealth's Economic Development Toolkit. While this program is not anticipated to be frequently used, it does provide a systematic process to address concerns regarding state regulatory requirements brought to VEDP or VIPC by prospect companies. And so, for instance, we could see this happening in emerging technologies, financial institutions, where a particular company, they might be, like I said, kind of a niche industry in a existing technology sector that could use some, whether it's to suspend regulations or actually create a new regulatory framework because of the specificity of that project. This would allow us to have this tool here to ask for a waiver. As mentioned, there are 14 states across the country that have this type of program. Thank you.
And I think there may be a question for you, from Delegate Krizik.
Sure.
Thank you. So can you tell us a little bit about how this process would work? You're cutting, the idea here is that you're cutting red tape, I guess.
Right. So it could work to either cut red tape, or it could also be able to create a regulatory framework to give certainty to that emerging technology or sector or project. So, for instance, if you had a company that maybe is going to be in like the new fusion industry, they may actually want a regulatory framework that provides them some framework. Certainty here in the Commonwealth of how they'd be able to operate. It could also be that there is current regulations that would keep them from operating. And so this, again, would allow VEDP on a project-by-project basis to go to the agency for a waiver.
Follow-up question?
So, our state regulations are generally developed over months, even sometimes years, with stakeholder involvement, public comment, sometimes public meetings and hearings, really transparent process. Aren't you concerned that this bill will set aside all of that process that's normally required, and then you don't have the public buy-in, nor do you have public input?
Well, because certainly you could figure out more around the process, but certainly from our perspective, when we have prospect companies, it's a timeliness issue. So I would think that there would be time to that agency would be working with both Office of Regulatory Reform and the administration to make sure that you're trying to get some proper buy-in and review of those regulations that you're looking at.
Final follow-up.
Delegate Krizik.
Thank you, Chairman. So my last question is, but even though they may try to do that, there is no certainty that the public would be involved in the process with this change. Am I correct?
Well, that probably is not a question for me to know exactly how this would run, because we are only the entity that is bringing forth, basically saying that this is a project that we think ought to be reviewed for a waiver. So after that process, I don't know exactly how the steps would be worked on.
Thank you. I understand.
Any other questions?
Are there any other questions from the committee for this witness? Otherwise, if there's anyone else who would like to speak in favor to the bill, please come to the podium. And is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the bill?
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Emily Francis with the Southern Environmental Law Center. I was able to have a good conversation with the delegates' office about this bill and about our opposition to 727. I understand what the delegate is seeking to do, but we do believe that executive exemptions to regulations on a project-by-project basis and potentially into perpetuity, as I read it on, I believe, line 30, it's not in the public interest. We believe that Virginia's regulations exist for a protective reason, and our underlying concern is the risk to public health, safety, or the environment by waiving those protections, which exist across agencies beyond DEQ. Again, we urge you to vote no on House Bill 727. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Chris Lamb with the Virginia League of Conservation Voters. I appreciate the conversations that the patron had with the Southern Environmental Law Center, as well as the work by the patron to not allow DEQ regs to be circumvented. But really the first thing I learned when working as an environmental advocate was that the environment's a big place and that environmental policy involves every single agency. And we know that if we were to just try to sort of cherry pick agencies, we would miss things. Maybe we'd miss something in the health and safety regs at VDOT or the consumer protections and energy affordability from the SEC, maybe something on resiliency from the VMRC. I think the other aspect here is consistency and transparency, especially regarding mega projects. We should really observe the protections that are in place for other projects. If they're worthy of being looked at for something small, they should be looked at for something big. And the public hearing process that goes along with those regulatory processes is essential. I don't want to see a situation where we see pressure from an economic development agency that leads to other agencies looking to ignore safeguards or circumvent public comment or otherwise skirt the regulatory process. We really think when it comes to these major projects, the scale of development necessitates a closer look and deeper community conversations rather than short-circuiting that debate. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, my name is Lillian Anderson and I'm representing the Virginia Conservation Network. We're the partnership of over 160 different conservation organizations across the Commonwealth, and we oppose this bill.
Gotta remember to turn my microphone back on. Online, I believe we do have an individual here to speak in favor to the bill, not present. Okay, we did have someone sign up and they're not present. Okay, Delegate Fowler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to make sure we're clear on what this bill actually does. And it's my understanding, the way I read the bill, all this bill essentially does is allow for a particular project to be considered, to be done differently or to lost my mind for a minute, but just to speed the process up. Certain projects would have the ability to be, sped up in the process, and that's all they've done. They didn't mandate, but I guess we have to ask ourselves, are certain projects, will every single project that comes forward to the Virginia Economic Development Partnership have to go through the exactly same process every time? That is the question. What's in the best interest for Virginia, for Virginia's economy, et cetera. So I just want to make sure we clarify that. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, any other, Delegate Kriesik?
I have a motion at the appropriate time.
Delegate Weber, did you want the last word before?
Sure. Well, just real quick. So, for instance, in the areas of finance or technology, this would be a useful tool to either, as Nicole said, either waive a regulation, but also or come up with a temporary regulatory structure. So, perfect example would be a couple of years ago, we had a piece of legislation because there's folks that essentially, in order to they were giving out loans to like a convenience store owner, and the way they were recouping that was via a percentage of the credit card bills. We didn't even know this existed until one of our fellow delegates brought it forward. And when we did, we discovered, okay, how many companies are doing this, et cetera. And the big bill ended up being a little bill of trying to get a report of how many companies were there. So what happened was you had a good player come forward and say, this is how we properly do things. So that would be an example where if somebody comes up with a new way of, say, financing, people or businesses, et cetera, and they'd like to create a framework where they want to be a good player, they could approach VEDP and say, look, we have this kind of new and innovative way of doing things, but we need a regulatory structure put in place to be able to utilize it so they're not flying under the radar where all of a sudden you have bad players that are taking advantage of people. And so that would be the idea behind this. The intent, which is part of the reason why we left DEQ out of it, is to, obviously we do not want to put in or utilize a removal of regulations that harm the environment and are possibly harmful to our constituents. But the idea is more in like the finance and technology realm where those waivers would really benefit a new business or an innovative idea. And we'd like them to come to the Commonwealth to be able to do that instead of going to North Carolina. That's it.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate
Thank you.
Krizek.
Madam Chair, I want to say I appreciate what the delegate's trying to do. You're trying to get some flexibility in the regulatory process and to streamline some things. And when it seems like it should be a simpler way of doing it and create some new regulatory structure. But I think that the problem here is that it may open up a Pandora's box, and there may be too many unintended consequences. It could undermine the overarching public benefit of our Virginia regulatory process, and that what our residents rely on every day for the safety, health, consumer, and natural resource protections. So I think this is something we can talk about off session, but because I think it's something we could work on for the next year, perhaps. But I would like to gently lay this on the table.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to lay the bill on the table. The clerk will open the roll. Clerk will close the roll, and the bill is laid on the table with a vote of 5-3. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Delegate Carr, you've been sitting patiently. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the subcommittee. HB 1133 simply changes Virginia 529's legal name from Virginia College Savings Plan to Commonwealth Savers Plan. The name change reflects the agency's broader mission of promoting overall financial wellness through saving plans for education, disability, and retirement savings, as well as educational access programming. The name change has been vetted there's no intellectual property conflict in Virginia. I hope the members of the subcommittee will consider reporting 1133.
Delegate, we have a question from Delegate Fowler.
Thank you. Sounds like a great idea to me. I move we report the bill.
Thank you. All right, well, is there anyone in the audience before we go that is here to speak in favor? And if you're in favor, you can see just maybe a thumbs up.
Thumbs up from Virginia College Savings Plan. Thank you.
All right, and anyone here in opposition? All right, no one here in opposition. I have heard a motion and a second to report the bill. The clerk will open the roll. He's coming. He's coming. He's coming.
Sorry, thank you.
All right, the clerk will close the roll. All right, the bill reports 8-0. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you so much, Chairman.
Okay. Let's see. Delegate Early, is that you in the back? Oh, I see Delegate Ware now. Let's see. Delegate Ware was first, and we were waiting for you. And then I see you guys want to sit in the front row. I can see who you are. Any patrons?
Thank you. I saw
If there's
several
more
of you.
patrons lurking back there wondering why I'm not calling on you, please come to the front row so I can see you. But Delegate Ware, you have HB 53. And at your pleasure, please go ahead and start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And what I have tried to do, since you all have heard this bill earlier, what I thought I would try and do is clear up the questions that arose last week and speak to those. And then if there are further questions or observations, we can move from there. So let me say, first of all, on House Bill 53, In simple terms, what we're trying to do is add a statute of limitations on appraisal work. Any entity who has access to an appraisal and finds an error, which is not fraud, can sue an appraiser as of the date of discovery presently. The problem for the appraiser is that they are required to keep work files, research, and the report on hand for 5 years. And then if an entity proceeds with a lawsuit past that 5-year limit, the appraiser is oftentimes left with nothing to support or defend themselves. The proposed statute of limitations that is in House Bill 53 at 5 years is also in line with the federal record-keeping rule. And then one of the questions that came up, several of you asked something related to this. How are others affected by the appraisal process protected until the transition from current law without a statute to this one? How does that taken care of? Others who are involved, lenders and borrowers, would still have 5 years to review and examine the appraisal report for defects. But after that time period, non-fraudulent defects cannot be litigated. The proposed legislation, however, is also specific in saying that fraudulent defects in the report are covered if discovered at any time and can be litigated. The paragraph 2 in the bill seems to have been added by Legislative Services, a provision designed to ensure that the alleged defects in an appraisal up to 2 years ago are filed now, and that the new statute of limitations would apply going forward. I think that's the gist of the questions we had, Madam Chair, and again, be glad to answer it further.
Thank you, Delegate Ware. Are there any questions from the committee? Is there anyone here in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this bill? Okay.
Madam Chair, my name is Jean Gannon, past president of the Appraisal Institute, Virginia Commonwealth Chapter, and I do speak in favor of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition of the bill? If this bill were to report from this committee, it would need to be re-referred to CTS. Oh, I was thinking county, cities, and town. It's courts. Got it. Okay. I was like scribble here. I was thinking that none of that would match, but for some reason I was thinking county, cities, and towns, and it's that time of day where I'm just seeing letters now, so it needs to go to courts, which makes more sense. So if this bill were to report, it would need to be re-referred to courts, so it would be a motion at the appropriate time.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Second.
Moved and seconded to report and re-refer to courts. The clerk will open the roll. All right, clerk will close the roll. Bill reports and is referred to courts. See you there.
Madam Chair and members.
All right. So I know we skipped over, we do have some patrons. I know we've skipped over some folks who had bills up in other committees. And so I saw Delegate Price, we'd called you earlier, we went past your name earlier, but I see that you are here now. So I'll go ahead and have you come up for HB 613.
Yes, thank you. Madam Chair and members, the purpose of the Henrietta Lacks Commission was to help sustain the legacy of Henrietta Lacks and her contributions, unbeknownst to her at the time, but her contributions to medical science. And it was through advancing cancer research and treatment through the creation of a biomedical research and data center. And the commission was given a sunset date of 2026. However, in the course of our work, it came to our attention that an outside entity is actually going to be building the center, and so and have promised to name it after her. So the commission felt that the the course of its work had come to an end. So they didn't want the statutory requirement to keep meeting when the purpose of the commission was being realized in a different way. And so we are asking that that sunset date be moved up to July 1st, 2024.
Thank you, Delegate Price. Are there any questions from the committee? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of the bill? Anyone in opposition to the bill? Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to report the bill. The clerk will open the roll. Clerk will close the roll, and the bill reports 8-0. Thank you,
Thank you
Delegate.
all.
Okay, catching up with the list to see if we missed anybody that's back in the room. Delegate Cordoza?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
When you're ready.
All right. This bill is to promote transparency by providing citizens easy online access to regulatory actions. Under current law, only about half of the regulations and no guidance documents are required to appear on the publicly accessible town hall website. For the last 2 years, however, an executive order has directed agencies to post both, and they've been able to do so using existing resources. This bill will make sure that the practice continues, ensuring that the public has quick and easy access to and can provide input on regulatory actions that affect their lives. This bill does not have any fiscal impact, as they have been doing this for the last 2 years, and did not have to hire any additional staff or request any additional resources.
All right, questions for the patron, Delegate Krizek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you give me some examples of how this bill will work?
It will simply require that all agencies post any regulatory changes to the town hall website, as they do currently. This will just continue. This will just codify what is currently being done into law. That is done by Executive Order 19.
So Madam Chair.
Follow up, Delegate Krizek.
Follow up. So you're codifying the current governor's Executive Order 19, correct?
Yes.
And can I ask a follow-up question, Madam Chair?
Yes, Delegate Krizek.
So would this also affect the independent agencies like the Virginia Tourism Board, the VHDA, ABC, CCA?
I will have the expert answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. So, Delegate Krizek, the answer would be the independent agencies would be required to post their regulations on the town hall website. They would not be subject to any other requirements, though, of the APA. This would be just a limited requirement for purposes of posting. Sorry, my name is Reed Bull. I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Regulatory Management.
Follow up, Delegate Krizek.
Yes, please. So I'm a little confused. You know, one of the beauties of the ABC, for example, and we just had in my subcommittee in ABC, we had a number of bills that have come through from all over the Commonwealth to ask us to create a license, a special license, so for big 500-plus stadium-type events, because we didn't actually have a license currently that you could go through the normal ABC licensing process, which is really a 30-day process. So we have another bill, my bill, that's moving through the General Assembly now that will be on the floor next week that will take care of that issue. We won't have to come to the General Assembly and spend, it could be a year, right? It could be a year. You might want this license, in March, and you have to wait till the following July. It could be over a year. And ABC right now, with this new, right now you can apply for any kind of, if you want to open your restaurant, you don't have to post it on the town hall, and you can get that license right away. how much of a delay is this going to add to the process? Is it a 30-day delay? Because town hall is usually at least a 30-day, correct?
Madam Chair, Delegate Kresek, so the answer would be, I believe there would be no delay. They can post it immediately. It doesn't require, to my understanding, a comment process. It's simply requiring a posting on the town hall website.
Delegate Kresek.
And Madam Chair, what problem is this fixing?
Certainly. So, Madam Chair, Delegate Kresek, I believe that the answer is that under current law, there are exemptions for roughly half of regulations or thereabouts, and essentially all guidance documents. So what the problem it would be fixing would be just ensuring that these are now all on the town hall website, that the public can see them, that they know what actions are being taken, but it doesn't, to my understanding, have any implications beyond that. It's simply transparency. The idea is to simply make everything available for the public without imposing the other requirements of the APA.
Final question, and I appreciate that. I think we're all, both sides of the aisle, think transparency is very important, and I do like the public to be, to see that. I like the town hall process. I'm wondering why. I'm just a little nervous about this. I'm probably going to vote against just to keep the dialogue going as this goes, but I'm not against what you're trying to do, Delegate. But I just want to spend a little bit more time making sure that, exactly as you say, I'm a big believer in unintended consequences that happen sometimes. So anyway, that's I have, because I like what you're trying to do. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the patron? And I guess I share some of Delegate Kresek's concerns about whether the bill, the language does what was described, or if it might create other unintended consequences. And I don't know, Council, do you wish to weigh in on kind of the words before us in terms of the consequences that might have beyond the scope of perhaps what the intent of this bill may be?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
So I guess my concern was looking at the words of the bill and kind of hearing the intent of the patron and the agency, and just trying to reconcile if there are words on this paper that go beyond or might have consequences beyond what the intent of this legislation is to do. And if you're not able to comment on that at this time, that's
Madam Chair,
Delegate Kresek.
maybe I can put it. So my concern is that somehow this would create, we have the exemptions for the independent agencies. My concern is that somehow the independent agencies would, by losing this exemption, would no longer be independent. And that's a concern. Does the language address that or make that problematic? Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Delegate Kresek, so there are exemptions from the regulations of the APA for those independent agencies that, like some of the ones that you mentioned, like the ABC and the CCA, so that when it comes to the regulatory process, they don't go through the same process as other typical executive branch agencies. So if under this bill, the intent is to bring them in the fold as the rest of the executive branch agencies, then that exemption that they currently have would not apply in the same way.
And Delegate Kresek, a question.
Yeah. So my concern is that the language is not precise, and it's my last question would be, Madam Chair, and to the delegate, have you run this by the independent agencies or any of them? Has ABC or CCA or BHDA or Virginia Tourism or any of those, have they been involved in the discussions on this, and have they signed off.
Madam Chair, Delegate Kresek, so we've not specifically spoken with the agency. However, they are currently, under Executive Order 18, posting their regulations on the Town Hall website. So they're already doing this under the Executive Order itself without, to my understanding, any increased burden.
Delegate Fowler.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I appreciate your comments, but again, executive orders have a duration, and so I'm just wondering, perhaps, given the testimony we're hearing, that it might be a good idea for this bill to perhaps go by for the day, or something, and come back.
Is that a motion, Delegate Fowler, to take it by for the day?
Yes, Madam Speaker.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of taking this bill by for the day will say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, 11:58 is by for the day.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. And Delegate Early, 11:93. Thank you for being patient. I know
no problem.
Been here for a little while, and I'd gone down the list, and your name is last on the list.
All good.
I'm sorry you're in that position, but
All good.
thank you for being patient.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, for having me today. This is House Bill, 1193. So this is, at least in my mind, a simple effort to make sure we're not unnecessarily blocking people from employment simply based on an arbitrary requirement that a college degree has been obtained by them. So in my mind, this is a pro-job, pro-work, pro-fairness bill. HB 1193 essentially addresses requirements for post-secondary degrees in state agencies. Many job postings unnecessarily mandate college degrees as a bar for entry, sort of creating that barrier when it really may not be necessary. So the proposed solution here essentially addresses the issue concerning hiring practices by directing the Department of Human Resource Management to develop a statewide recruitment policy that encourages state agencies to focus not just on a degree or a credential, but an appropriate baseline requirements rather than rigidly adhering to sort of degree qualifications. Unless, of course, that truly is what's necessary and the bill allows for that. So the goal is to create a more flexible and responsive system that recognizes sort of the diverse pathways that get us to where we want to be in terms of state employees. And I think it fosters opportunities for individuals who may have gained valuable experience through non-traditional routes as opposed to just sort of the classroom experience. So just a couple points on this. I think nationally around 70 million Americans have strong and valuable work experience but don't have a college degree. But currently, I believe it's around 60% of public jobs say they require a degree, which is a mismatch. Obviously, people can gain necessary skills through things like on-the-job experience, military training, apprenticeships, or all sorts of other ways. This is similar things have taken place in a lot of states, and it's not a red state, blue state thing. This kind of steps have been taken in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Colorado, Utah, Alaska, North Carolina, New Jersey, South Dakota, Ohio. A lot of private sector employers, big ones like Google, Lockheed, Delta, Walmart, are all doing similar things to remove unnecessary barriers for their employees. So, again, what this basically does is prevent non-degree holders from simply being weeded out at the beginning of a process, giving them a fair shake and a fair shot. So again, in my mind, this is a fairness bill. Certainly not a bias against those with a degree, but simply trying to give everybody a fair shot and level the playing field. So I appreciate the committee's consideration. There's no fiscal impact. We got that statement back, and I would welcome questions and thank again the committee for its time.
Thank you, Delegate. Before we get to questions on the bill, I just more on a kind of an administrative note, wanted to confirm or ask Council if this language of HB 1193 is identical to Delegate Lefwich's HB 680, which is also on the docket for today, just so we can determine the best way to proceed.
Yes, Madam Chair, the two bills are identical.
Okay. Okay, so we
Delegate Lefwich has good taste, obviously.
We did grow up kind of close together.
That's true.
Something in the water. Okay, well, we do have a couple of questions for your bill, and then we can make a determination about how to proceed with which bill gets acted upon in which way. But I do have a question from Delegate Krizek.
Thank you. I like the Leftwich version better. Just that first line. No, I'm just kidding. You're just brand new, that's all.
That's right.
Is this really necessary? That's my question is, do we need this law? I like what you're doing. I think you're right. You know, there's certainly a lot of different kinds of experiences that people have, and they shouldn't be just discounted because they don't have a post-secondary degree. And that's always a good thing. But we don't also want to, as you said, we don't want to discriminate against those who are educated or maybe perhaps overeducated in some of the situations. Is there a reason though, like that we need to have actual code language to make this happen? If it couldn't already be the case, couldn't the department already make these changes?
Well, they could, but this just ensures that it will happen and that it'll happen long term. I think the important thing is this is really sort of a front-end question. I mean, obviously, the hiring decisions will be made based on a whole lot of factors, and of course, in a lot of these, education and degree will, of course, come into play, and they can even still have it as a requirement as long as they justify it. So I don't really consider this sort of a fundamental change, but I do think it's really helpful on the front end, because I think basically in our sort of modern world, a lot of times, even if the job doesn't necessarily mandate it, a lot of times you'll look through resumes and say, okay, well, we're just going to weed these out because they don't have X, Y, or Z. So I think that's sort of the importance of it. And I think the reason, to answer your question, why legislation as opposed to just, tell them to do it or allow them to do it, is just to make sure it actually happens and happens long term.
Delegate McClure?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I thank the patron for bringing this forward and definitely appreciate the intent of this bill, but it feels a little prescriptive. So I just wanted to ask the patron in Section E, starting on line 163, I was wondering where the scale between years of direct experience and degrees came from. I know that the patron noted that there were a couple different guidelines from across different states around the U.S., but just curious where those ranges came from, starting on line 163, Section E.
I think if the committee is fine with it, we have a witness here who can probably answer that question better than I can. Would you be happy to hear from him?
Okay. If there's anyone here, I assume you're here to speak in favor for the bill as well. And so if I get at this time, I'll call up anyone who would like to speak in favor of the bill, and you're welcome to provide your testimony as well as answering the delegate's question, and feel free to stick around for any follow-up questions.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you, Delegate Early and Delegate Leftwich, for presenting these bills. So I'll answer your question first, and then I'm happy to, if that's okay with you,
Yeah, if you
Chairwoman.
could let us know your name and who you're with.
Absolutely. Yep. My name is Jonathan Wolfson. I'm the Chief Legal Officer and Policy Director at Cicero Action. We're a nonprofit that tries to develop innovative policy solutions to public policy problems. We work in a number of states around the country. I happen to be a Virginian as well, but work in a number of states. So to your question specifically, those numbers are kind of the best practices that a number of states have been starting to use as kind of taking the number of years that it would take for someone to finish those degrees and then trying to use that as a proxy for the number of years of experience, just so that if an agency were to put a requirement in for years of experience, they weren't going to kind of have a way to circumvent the process and say, oh, well, you have to have a bachelor's or 40 years of experience. So just try to make those things have a similarity. So that's the reason. So, and I'll, Chairwoman, if I may,
if you'd like to continue
very
with
briefly.
Yep.
So I think that, as the delegates mentioned, and as a number of folks know, this is a very kind of bipartisan action that has been taking place in a number of states around the country. You've got governors in California and Georgia who are passing this. It passed the Georgia House and Senate with only one dissenting vote, and the reason that senator voted no is because he didn't believe any bill should ever be unanimously supported, so he actually supports the bill. So this is one of those bills that there are a number of folks who have limited access to the job market. The best story, when Maryland moved to do this, in Maryland, they found a number of folks who'd been working at the NSA as security for IT who were unable to get jobs working for the Maryland Department of Transportation in IT security because they had military experience but no actual degree in information technology. And obviously, if you can protect the American state secrets at the NSA, you probably can protect the stoplights in Baltimore. So I think that it's a valuable bill. This is one place where you've got the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal in complete agreement, and there's a lot of opportunity to give folks who have, for whatever reason, not had a chance to get access to jobs in the state government, that access to those jobs. So with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions, but really appreciate everyone's time.
Okay. Are there any other questions for this witness from the committee? And if not, I don't see anyone on my board. Anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the bill?
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Stacey Gordon with the Virginia Manufacturers Association. A traditional four-year degree is not the only pathway to a successful career in today's workforce, and in many fields it may not even be the best or most direct path. But unfortunately today, despite the multitude of alternative pathways like industry credentialing, there are still many in society who believe that false narrative that a four-year degree is still the only pathway to a successful career. And it's time to counter that narrative as a society, and it's time that our state hiring policies reflect that as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition of the bill? All right. So at this time, are there any other questions from the committee for the patron? So at this time, I think the committee has a decision not only as far as the fate of this bill, but how we might like to
Can't roll in because they're identical.
they're identical, so we're not able to incorporate because they are actually identical bills.
Madam Chair, can I make a motion this time?
Delegate Krizek.
What's Delegate?
Delegate Early.
What are the two bills? What's the other bill number?
680.
So, with all due respect, Delegate Early, I would like to move that we gently lay your bill on the table, and then later in a moment I'll have another motion to pass and report your Delegate Leftwich's bills.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, to move and seconded to lay HB 1193 on the table. That is a recorded vote, so the clerk will open the roll.
We're confident. Yes, true, you are. You're conflicted.
All right, the clerk will close the roll. And then before the next motion, Delegate Leftwich, did you want to add any testimony for your bill?
I think Delegate Early summed up the bill very well. I was distracted during some of it, so a couple of points I'd like to just make sure are iterated for the committee's consideration. The first is that under our current scheme, post-secondary degrees are required to obtain certain jobs. And this bill would eliminate that necessity. That's what causes the opening up of the job market. And in talking to Chairman Krizak, he recommended that I mention these statistics, and so I will. 7.4 million jobs are disproportionately awarded to people with degrees who actually have experience that will allow them to perform that job. And of that segment of the population, 61% are black workers, 55% are Hispanic workers, and 61% are veterans, and 66% are rural workers. So we're missing a huge segment of the population who could go to work in good paying jobs if we had passed this bill or they just had an education. And the cost of education is at record highs, with 62% of Americans over age 25 that do not have a college degree. And I can tell you, I have 5 kids. I'm almost through paying with 4, and it's breaking me. So with that, I would just ask the committee to act favorably upon the bill. And I'm happy to have as many co-patrons on both sides of the aisle as possible.
Thank you, Delegate Leftwich. Delegate Krizak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to move to report Delegate Leftwich's bill, HB 680.
It's been moved and seconded. The clerk will open the roll. All right, the clerk will close the roll on the bill report 7-0. Thank you, Delegate Lefwich, and thank you, Delegate Early. And I've heard the request for co-patrons, so I appreciate everyone working together on this. Thank you. All right, Delegate Maldonado, I saw came in the room, and I see you next. We got you both.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. HB number 728 is before us. I'm hoping this is a sort of technical and clarifying bill that you may be surprised we aren't allowed to do already. State agencies and institutions of education are permitted to enter into contracts with technology vendors to purchase equipment to meet their needs. This is familiar to us. According to our current surplus laws as written, institutions can dispose of technology at the end of the equipment's life cycle by either holding an auction, donating materials to nonprofit or veteran organizations, or destroying the equipment due to its sensitive data. In other states, technology vendors often prefer to refurbish old equipment at the end of their life cycle to avoid strain on the environment and save money for purchasers by offering buyback or trade-in programs. However, our surplus laws don't currently allow that. And they don't specifically give state agencies the power to participate in a buyback or trade-in program in which a third-party purchasing vendor can buy the devices back from the agency to refurbish for later use. So safe and secure technology is expensive, and the outdated policy that we have here on the books has potentially cost the Commonwealth millions of dollars in overspent technology. Cost and caused an unfortunate backlog in the disposal of older technology. So this legislation is meant to address that, and it will amend the current surplus laws to explicitly allow state agencies and institutions of education to participate in a buyback or trade-in program without penalty. We've confirmed that VITA and DGS with them that to ensure this legislation would not interfere with their security and data privacy requirements and will maintain any purchasing vendor requirements set forth by VITA. There is no negative fiscal impact to the legislation because the legislation doesn't carry anything. It just clarifies what is allowed. So we're hoping that this helps us be able to move in more nimble directions to give our agencies choice. Certainly, we may still want to have new technologies, but there may be opportunities in circumstances in which refurbished equipment might be appropriate. So I thank you. I will pause there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Delegate Maldonado. Are there any questions from the committee for the patron? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of the bill?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. Patrice Lewis here on behalf of Apple, and we do support the bill and thank the delegate for putting it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone here to speak in opposition of the bill? Do I hear a motion? Second. All right, it's been moved to report and seconded. The clerk will open the roll. Clerk will close the roll, and the bill report 7-0. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
And Delegate Munton-King. HB 814.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start by saying, come with us to one of Virginia's grand plantations, where this lovely family lived for many years and built this beautiful home. And if you would like to know more about it, you can watch several television shows on PBS about this lovely home and the family who inhabited it. This is one of many depictions of homes in Virginia, and I won't name which one, but as you go down the page, on our tourism website, you'll see hundreds of lovely depictions that completely omit the hundreds of thousands of people who toiled to build these beautiful homes, who were forced and enslaved on these properties, and their stories are very rarely told in these descriptions. Now, I want to be fair. There are institutions, historic organizations throughout our Commonwealth who do an amazing job telling the stories of the enslaved. But our tourism sector has not caught up to the Monticellos and Mount Vernons of the world in really ensuring that the contributions of Africans are not omitted from these descriptions. So what this bill will do is pretty simple. It will ask our tourism department to work with subject matter experts to develop standards for how they tell the stories of these properties and ensuring that people who were the foundation of these beautiful palatial plantations are included in those descriptions. And I'm happy to take any questions from the committee.
Delegate Fowler.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have just a quick question. I think a lot of our tourism destinations are, a lot of them, and probably most of them may be public, but some are private. So I guess would this apply just to public property, or is that a mandate on private landowners or whatever? So that would be my question. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you look at the description, we are simply talking about, and I believe it's around somewhere 60 to 62 lines, but we're simply talking about tourism, the Virginia Department of Tourism. So this does not require any private properties, but it creates a standard for how we talk about this on our Commonwealth-related websites.
Delegate Lefwich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I agree 100% with your bill. And there's a story out there that has not been told. And I'm quite frankly ashamed that I grew up, I'm 61 years old, and went through K-12, college, and law school and didn't learn about a lot of the horrors of slavery and how Virginia contributed to that. Having said that, I want to kind of piggyback on what Delegate Fowler's question was. And I'm going to acknowledge at the outset I've not read all the lines prior to the last paragraph. But the last paragraph says that they will create a list of all real property in Virginia. And I mean, again, if this applies to government property,
I am so sorry. I have a substitute.
Okay.
I am so sorry.
Right.
Thank you, Delegate Lethbridge. I have a substitute that the staff has, and the staff has been here trying to flag me to remind me that I do indeed have a substitute that addresses that concern that was developed with the chair of general laws. So thank you for that. And I would like to present the substitute.
If that substitute answers my question, then I'm going to move that we adopt the substitute.
Could I have
move to report?
Could I have the council please report the substitute?
Madam Chair, that substitute is available online now, and I think it does address Delegate Lethbridge's question.
All right. Okay. Once members have had a moment to review, I will entertain a motion to adopt the substitute.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the substitute. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Delegate, do you want to expand any more on, or do you feel like we've covered what the substitute does, or is there anything else you'd like to comment on that?
Yes. So speaking to the substitute, what it does is it clears up language that we are specifically talking about tourism websites and creating standards for how things that are even submitted have a certain standard that they have to meet about properties, and it will give the Department of Tourism the subject matter experts to work out exactly what that policy is.
All right. Any other questions for the patron from the committee? Is there anyone in the audience? I was about to say it all. There are a couple people. Is there anyone in the audience to speak in favor of this bill? And is there anyone in the audience who will speak in opposition to this bill?
Madam Chair,
Delegate Cole.
I move that we report with amendments.
That's the word.
It's getting late here. All right, moved and, did I hear a second? Second. I did hear a second. Moved and seconded that we report this bill. 8:14, the clerk will open the roll. Clerk will close the roll. The bill report 7-0. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you. We have one bill. Oh, okay. Actually, Delegate Lopez is on his way, and that is the last bill we're going to hear. Delegate Converse Fowler has a bill on our docket which has an identical bill that is in a different committee, and so we are going to take her bill by for the day. Will be the motion I'll be asking for so that we can get those bills where they need to be to reconcile that.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded to take Delegate Fowler's bill by for the day. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the bill is by for the day. So let's see. Delegate Lopez is the last bill, and he's chairing a committee, and he's texting me, and he is trying to get here.
Lisa, can't you present this bill?
I was going to ask you.
So I'd hate to have him miss the opportunity. I know I have a bill up in another committee shortly as well. If we can go I was going to suggest going to ease. Do you, Delegate Krizek?
I was just going to ask, Madam Chair, if we had, does council have any amendments or substitutes for this bill? That Lopez's bill? You're not allowed to?
Okay.
Right.
So what I think we'll do at this moment is the committee will go at ease. He is trying to get out of his committee as soon as possible. I think they're hearing testimony, so it should be a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and put our committee at ease for just a few minutes. If anyone needs to take a little break, now would be a great time, and I'll call us back hopefully very soon. Committee is at ease. I don't know if I need to gavel for that, or is that just... Committee is called to order. We I know we're all kind of balancing our schedules, chairing committees and needing to present bills in other committees. Delegate Lopez is hard at work chairing his subcommittee right now, and so I will entertain a motion to take HB 962 by for the day, and we will get it next week.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded to go by for the day. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right, by for the day. And I have a motion to adjourn.
Second. So moved.
Got it. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we are adjourned.